Hey guys, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, back with another great video for you today. In this video, we are talking all things record player setup. Now, I got this question from a viewer, and she was wondering how she could get started into the wonderful world of vinyl. She said she was a little bit lost and confused and wasn't sure what player to buy, what she needed to make it all work, and so I thought this would be a great video. Someone that is a beginner that just wants to learn, and vinyl is a wonderful, wonderful hobby. The sound quality is so much better than anything digital you're going to get today, in my personal opinion, and it's fun just putting on a record and dropping that needle. So I hope you guys learn a lot from this. We're going to talk about what kinds of record players you might want to buy and the speakers to go along with them. We'll be talking about the things that you might need in addition to having a record player, so some fun accessories. And then we're also going to talk about what the setup is and what you need to make everything all work. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please know that all of my opinions and views on things are my own. I am not sponsored by any of these companies. I do want to start off by saying that this viewer mentioned she was thinking about getting a Crosley, and she asked me what my opinion was. And I'm going to tell you what my honest opinion is. I think Crosleys are terrible. They do not work very well. First of all, they have a plastic platter, which is very unstable and cheaply made. They have a plastic record needle, which is not good because eventually you will need to change your record needle as it gets worn down. And plastic record needles are also very wide instead of pointed, so they can't really track that groove very well, and it creates scratches in your records. And their sound quality is terrible. I mean, built-in speakers on something usually isn't very good, and Crosley's just one of those things where the speakers don't work. It sounds like a tin can rolling around in a box. It's just terrible. And I had Crosley first. That was the first record player I ever got when I had maybe 2 or 3 vinyl. And then I started wondering why my Frankie Valli records were getting scratched and why I had to crank the volume all the way up just to hear the record, because there wasn't very good tracking with the needle and it wasn't producing a very good sound. Everything was sort of muffled and distorted. So I started delving into the wonderful world of vinyl, and I learned so much, and I upgraded my record player, and I now have a Fluence RT82 record player, which is a really good record player. It's not really budget friendly, but I am going to recommend a few that are down in the description box below. And I got a pair of good speakers, and I really do think that good speakers make the difference here, and I got them from a local store, so I was able to get a super good discount because they were used. So that is something we will also talk about. So please enjoy this video, stick around with me, and I hope you all learned something. Let's jump in. Hey guys, so we are at my record player, and I'm going to start off by showing you the parts of a record player. I feel that is very important, and you definitely need to know it before I can move on and talk about things to look for in a record player. This is the plinth, that's the base of the record player. These are the feet. This is the speed adjustment knob. This record player does 33 1/3 and 45 RPM speeds. This also is my on-off button. Some record players will do 78 speeds to play the old shellac discs. This is the platter. This is the spindle where the record kind of is held into place. This is the head shell. That's the cartridge. That's the needle. This is the Q lever, the anti-skate adjustment knob, and the tracking force adjustment knob, and the dust cover. So now that we've talked about the parts of a turntable, let's talk about actually shopping for a turntable. What are the things that you need to look for when you're out actually staring at a box ready to pick up a record player? Well, one of the things you want to consider is what kind of record player you want to buy. You can either buy a belt-driven turntable or a direct drive turntable. Now, direct drive turntables are quieter because belt drives have that motor that's very loud, and it does create a lot of surface noise, and you don't want that when you're listening to vinyl. You really want that pure, crisp, clean listening experience. So I personally like the belt-driven turntables. Now, one thing to note with belt-driven turntables is you do need to eventually replace the belt because probably it will get worn down. But that's from years of use, so it's not a big deal. You can call the manufacturer and buy another one, or one of your local audio stereo stores probably will have one they can order for you. So personally, I like the belt-driven turntables. Now you also want to look for something that has a really solid plinth. You don't want something chintzy or flimsy that can move around because, again, you don't want that needle to be jumping and scratching across your records. Also, having those little rubber feet that keep your record player level also help with absorption of other sounds and things coming in that could cause that needle to jump. So those are important as well. I also like looking on a record player to make sure it has a dust cover. I don't like dust getting in the record player when I'm not using it because it just can kind of clog up the inside, and you don't want that. So having a nice dust cover is a really good option. And then I always check to make sure it has a Q lever. Now, some record players, like the U-Turn Audio turntable that's very popular and very, very budget friendly, can be good, but they do charge you extra for the Q lever, and I just don't understand that. I think that should be standard on pretty much every record player. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, I guess, if you don't have the Q lever, but if your hand's really shaky, it's hard to get that needle to drop perfectly without scratching or, damaging your record. So the Q lever, I think, is kind of important. It's a really nice feature to have. So I'm sorry my dog is barking, but another thing to look for in a record player is the tone arm. You want to make sure the tone arm is nice and hefty. You don't want a little chintzy, flimsy plastic tone arm. Mine is metal. Now, obviously, the best kind is carbon fiber, but you typically don't see those on lower end models. They're typically on very expensive record players, but just get a solid tone arm. Now, there's a variance in shape. Mine is an S-shaped tone arm versus just the straight tone arm that you usually see on record players. And I feel like that works the best, having the S shape, because it does sort of curve like that vinyl is curved, and I think that it helps the needle track the groove just a little bit better, and that is my opinion. But you guys can do research and find out what you like and what you want. But as long as the tone arm is nice and sturdy, that is the best part. Now also, I talked about if you're someone that wants to upgrade your record player over time and really make your sound just perfect and curated the way you like it, I would choose a record player that can be upgraded. So that means that the cartridge can be changed out on the record player. And there's two types of mounts for cartridges. You have your standard mount that has 2 screws, and then mine is a P mount, and it has 4 little pins that connect by a single twisted, what am I trying to say? A nut. I'm sorry. Goodness gracious. I do woodworking and I still couldn't think of that. Holy moly. But it's a P mount with 4 slender pins, and they connect together, and then it's faceted by a little nut. So that's what I have on mine, and it makes it very easy to change out the head shell and the cartridge, because you can just pull them apart and then connect another one on there, as long as also it's a P mount and it can fit. So you want to look for that, because it's nice over time to be able to upgrade your cartridge. You're not stuck with one thing that's just from the record player factory, and you can't upgrade it. So I have the Ortofon 2M Red cartridge, which was $120. I upgraded from the AT95E, and then that's kind of a standard cartridge. It's the green and black cartridge that comes on a lot of record players. It's not bad, but I did choose to upgrade it. And then if I want, I can get the Ortofon 2M Blue, the black, or the bronze. Well, the bronze is pretty expensive at like $600. But that's for more advanced record aficionados. But if you're just getting started, I would look for something where if you got more into vinyl and you learned more and you wanted to upgrade basically that you could. So, and along with the cartridge thing, it's very important that you set the tracking force on a record player, because that is the weight at which the record player stylus needle sits on the record and kind of bears down. And you don't want too much of that pressure on the record because it will scratch the record and damage the grooves. So you have to set the right tracking force for your cartridge, and every cartridge has a tracking force that is recommended for it. So you want to make sure that if you're going to get a record player where you could upgrade the cartridge later on, you want to make sure it also has tracking force availability so that you can set that and make sure it's not damaging your grooves. Along with that, anti-skate is kind of nice, and basically it applies force going in the opposite direction to keep your the tone arm from skating inwards on the record, which can happen when it gets a little bit like wonky, and you don't want that. So it is nice to have an anti-skate dial, but again, if that's not on the record player you're looking at, that's not the end of the world. It's not terrible. I would really be more concerned with the tracking force dial being there, especially if you're going to upgrade the cartridge later on. Now, there's different types of needles to consider when you're upgrading a cartridge, and this really has nothing to do with picking out per se a record player, but I thought that I would mention this as well. So you have spherical and conical, and then elliptical. Now, spherical and conical sort of look like a ballpoint pen under a microscope. They're really rounded, and the problem for me with that is that it doesn't sit in the groove very well. So obviously the cartridge is reading that information from the groove, and that's what makes the music sound come out. And if it can't read it very well, you're going to get a lot of distortion and damage, and you don't want that. So for me personally, I chose an elliptical stylus because it's more of a diamond shape, and in my opinion it really fits down in the groove well and tracks that groove all the way around perfectly. So for me, I like the elliptical styluses if you guys can get that on your cartridges. But back to the record player, as far as shopping for one, I also would just make sure that the platter is not a flimsy plastic. That doesn't really help anyone. Crosley, that's another knock against them. Their platters are plastic, and I think they're terrible. So I like a heavy metal platter or acrylic. Now, acrylic is really great because with acrylic, you don't have to get a record mat. You can literally put the record down on it, and it won't scratch, which is a wonderful thing. But note, acrylic platters can be kind of expensive, and if you go the U-Turn Audio route, where you're buying their turntable and then paying extras for upgrades like the Q lever, you're also going to have to pay extra for the acrylic platter. But there's a little hack to that. If you want an acrylic platter, you can get an acrylic record mat, and that will also help reduce some of the surface noise. So I think that that really is a good option, especially if you're on a budget. So those are the things that I would look for in a record player. Again, just make sure it's a reputable brand. They have a number that you can call if you have any issues, that kind of thing. Don't go cheap from like just your regular old Barnes & Noble. Really go to like a Best Buy or someplace like that and find a really nice record player. Now, again, with the record player, you want to make sure it has a built-in preamp if you're going to use speakers that are powered, because again, to make the whole record setup work, you need the record player, the preamp, the amplifier, and the speakers. And if you don't want to buy all of those pieces of equipment, you can get a record player that has a built-in preamp and then speakers that are powered. Now, if you want to have a little bit more equipment and you have the room and you think, okay, I can tinker and upgrade later with some of those things, then that is great. I'm all for it. You want to get the record player, the preamp, the amplifier, and then passive speakers to go with that. So passive speakers don't have a preamp, active speakers do. And again, with speakers, you can get some that are powered that have the or active, I say active powered, same thing. But you can get them with the Bluetooth inside of them, which is really nice because, like I mentioned before, if you have friends come over and you're having a little get together and you want to play some music or they want to play you a song, that gives you some different choices than just necessarily hearing vinyl all the time. Of course, that's my preferred method of listening, but I'm also subscribed to Sirius XM's 50s on 5, so I will put that on sometimes, or like at Christmas, maybe some of the Christmas music stations will have some neat stuff, and I'll do that over the Bluetooth. So that's a nice option if you can add that in on your speakers. Also with speakers, it is nice if you can get some that have a remote, because fiddling with the back of the speakers to adjust the volume or to change the input is a real hassle, and I just find that having a remote's nice. So I'm going to give you a list of some budget speakers down below. Now I have the Klipsch RP40, so the RP41s I think is what I have. They're powered speakers. The RP41s or something like that. All those numbers get kind of confusing sometimes, but those are really great speakers. I did catch them on sale, and I bought a set of speakers plus the subwoofer that I have that's Klipsch through a local guy who was selling them used at the vinyl store. So I say sale, but that's how I got them, and it was a really good deal. So I paid probably like $150 for everything, which is super because those speakers retail at like $400 a piece. And the guy just said that he was ready to get rid of them. He had a set of Klipsch, nicer, a more upgraded version in his living room, and he was a big, audiophile, so he had several turntables set up as well, and he didn't need them. And then he said after he sold them to me, he looked them up and realized how kind of expensive they were. So I got a super deal on them. They're great. I've had no issues. They're wonderful. So you can also check your local vinyl stores or like audiophile sound stores and see if they're selling anything used or open box. Of course, you want to make sure it works, but if it does, hey, you get a great deal on something that's really, really nice. And I think that the Klipsch brand is a great brand. They make some good speakers, but again, they're not really for the budget-friendly consumer because a lot of their stuff can be pretty expensive. Now, I do think that they have a pair of powered speakers at their cheapest, like $240, and then they do go on sale. So you can get stuff, again, also on sale, like Black Friday or other times of the year. So now I want to talk about some things that you're going to need also with your record player, and these are things that you just kind of need to maintain your vinyl. So the first thing is you need a record mat. Now most record players do come with one. I like this cork mat here. There's a variety of different ones. I have an acrylic one, a cork one, and then the rubber one that came with my record player, and they also come in leather. Now I like this cork one. I've been rotating through them just to see if it makes a difference in my sound, because everything that you do, even up to the cables of what goes in from the speaker to the amplifier, does make a big difference. And I know that it sounds kind of crazy. Some people will spend like thousands of dollars on just a cable alone. Now I don't think you have to be that fanatical about it, but it does make sense that everything kind of plays a role into how that finished sound is really gonna come out. And this is a great record mat, and I picked it up on Amazon for a couple of bucks. So if your record player doesn't come with one, you want to get one of these. The other thing you're going to need is a soft cloth, and that's just to clean records, clean your record player from dust. This is a microfiber cloth. This I just picked up at the grocery store. It's a Ritz brand dusting cloth. It's a nice cotton, microfiber material. Well, it's not microfiber, it's cotton, but microfiber or cotton, just a really nice soft cloth that you can wash and use to keep your vinyl clean. Going along with that theme, you do need vinyl cleaning fluid to clean records. And I will show you a video how I clean my records. I've actually gone away from using this cleaner, and I use a a record cleaner, the spin clean, I think is what it's called. And that's a little bit of an investment, but it is worth it if you do clean a lot of records, especially if you're like me and you get them from the antique stores. Some of them can be really dirty, and you don't want that dust getting into the grooves of your record and really affecting the sound. Those clicks and pops that you're hearing in a lot of vinyl is not really supposed to be there, and most likely it's because of dust or static, and you don't want either of those. So I recommend a cleaning fluid. Also, you'll need some sort of a brush. Now this is an anti-static brush. It just gets rid of the static, and I like to use this right before I play vinyl. I just turn the record player on and go like this from the outside in, and just sweep it away very carefully as the record's spinning like that, and then pick it up so that I'm leaving all the dust on the bristles here instead of behind on the record player. So sometimes record players will come with this when you get one, other times they won't, but they're very inexpensive. You can pick these up at Best Buy. This one's an Audio Quest brand, and I do think Amazon sells these. The next thing you need, and most record players do come with this, but if they don't, you're going to need one if you listen to 45s. This is a 45 adapter, and it's important to have so you can set that down and then put the 45 on top of it. That's the only way you can play 45s, is if you have one of these. Mine came with this little plastic one, and it works just fine. Also, you're going to need a way to clean the stylus, because you don't want dust and debris getting stuck on that stylus and then going back into the grooves and really getting jammed down in there. So I love Onzo Zero Dust, and what this is it's a little spongy pad here, and you just set it on your record player and lower the needle down into it. And you can see mine's, well, I don't know if that will come up, but mine's really dirty. And that's okay, because what it does is it just collects the dust into this gooey material and pulls it off the needle. Because needles are very fragile, so you don't want to take like a big brush or something to it. You want to just lightly get the dust off very carefully so you don't break it. And this is great. Now this is a bit of an investment at $40, but these last forever. You never have to get rid of it. In fact, you can even take the goo out of there and clean it and put it back in, and it's good as new. And it comes in this great little package with a magnifying glass so you can see all the dust. And I recommend doing this before each play. So on the first side, you're going to do it, and then again on the second side. And do that with every record. And this is really, really great stuff. The next thing you're going to need, if you are going to change out your stylus, geez, thank you. You do need to get one of these scales, and basically it is a tracking force scale, so it will help you get that right weight down. And what you do is you put the tracking force to 0, and then you lower the needle down onto this, and it will make sure that it's at the recommended tracking force, so they will recommend what the tracking force should be. So this is just a little inexpensive. I think it was $11 on Amazon scale, and you can get one of these. Now the digital scales sometimes aren't as accurate, so you can get one of the old school slide scales, and some vinyl people really like that better, but I find that this works great. They'll tell you how you can calibrate it when you get it and make sure that it's accurate. The next two things are things that I think that are really important, but they're not something that you just have to have. And this next thing is a record stabilizer. If you have a record that's warped, and sometimes they're so warped that there's nothing you can do about it, you can put this on top of the spindle and it presses it down like a clamp, and it kind of helps that warping a little bit. So if you get a record from an antique store or something, and even the vinyl stores might have them occasionally, and they're just not the best, this will really help that. So I love my record stabilizer. Now this thing is kind of, I think, important. I said that maybe you don't have to have it, but I kind of changed my mind on that. I do think you need one of these. And it's a level, and basically what you do is you put it on the record player, on the platter, and then wait for it to get level, and by doing that you can adjust the feet and really get your record player level. You don't want to be playing vinyl on an uneven surface because that won't go very well. So this was like $1 on Amazon. Just one of these bubble levels, very easy to pick up. Sometimes you can even get a record stabilizer that has a bubble level in it, and then so you get two things for really the price of one. So those are some of the accessories that you will need, or that I think you should get when you have a record player and you start playing vinyl. I hope you found this video helpful, and I'm going to link some of the record players down below. One of the record players I think is really great is the Technica Lp 160. Now that one is, I believe, a direct drive, but it is sort of the entry-level record player that everyone seems to recommend, and it does play records backwards, so if you're a DJ and you're getting into that, it's a really good budget-friendly DJ turntable. I also like the Technica Lp 60, which is a nice record player. You can't change the stylus, but if that doesn't matter to you and you just want to play records at $99, and the fact that it comes in multiple colors, it is a really nice budget option. Also, I would check out U-Turn Audio's turntables. They have a nice budget-friendly option, and you can customize it with different colors, which people really do like. The one thing I mentioned with them you have to be careful with is the fact that you have to pay extra for some of the things that I mentioned, like the Q lever and other things that I think should just sort of be standard on a record player. Now, as far as speakers go, I really like clip speakers, but as I mentioned, they're kind of expensive. So you can either catch a sale, or the first pair of speakers that I had was the bookshelf speakers. They're powered speakers, and they're by the Insignia brand, which is, I think, Best Buy's house brand. And they're a pair of Bluetooth speakers, and they are very nice. Solid wood cabinets. You can remove the cover on them if you want, because a lot of people do that. They like the aesthetic look, and I've done that as well with my clip speakers. And it comes with a remote. So it's a very, very good speaker, and they run, I think, like $50 on sale. So it's a super good buy, and you get a pair of nice speakers with that. Also, I've heard the Mica MB speakers are really, really good, and people tend to like those. And also, you can go vintage, guys. You don't have to go buy a new record player. Vintage really is some of the best turntables, I think, in a lot of people's opinions. But one thing with vintage you have to be careful about is when you're at the thrift store and you see a record player that's maybe like $2, it can work and it may not work. And then if it doesn't work, unless you know a lot about record player restoration, you're going to have a journey ahead of you to repair it, because you have to get old parts and you have to know a lot about that. And I think that's a little bit of a hassle. But the Techniques brand is a really good vintage player from the 70s. That was like the creme de la creme of record players back then. So if you can find one of those new and working, or well, not new, but you know, out in the wild, new to you, then I would say go ahead and pick it up, because those are really good players. Now, of course, the players from the 50s and 60s that are portable, or that they're in those long record cabinets, really also aren't the best. I wouldn't really recommend those, but definitely look for some vintage pieces. You can also go that route with speakers, and of course you can get different receivers, amplifiers if you want. So there's a lot of good out there. You just have to do your research and be very, very careful. So again, I hope this video helped you. I tried to cover everything that I possibly could, and then if you guys want, I will do another video on how to shop for vinyl. Of course, I can't go out right now, and so I am sort of waiting for things to open back up, but I will do a video soon on kind of a shop with me and show you what to look for when buying vinyl and how you know that it's in good condition and good quality. And so I hope for now you guys stay in, stay safe, and binge YouTube.